August 28th, 1964, the Delmonico Hotel, New York City. The telegram arrived at 3:47 a.m. John Lennon was awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the sirens outside his window. The Beatles had just played Forest Hills Tennis Stadium. 20,000 screaming fans. His ears were still ringing. But it wasn't the noise keeping him awake. It was the emptiness. The concierge knocked 3 times. Soft, apologetic knocks. The kind reserved for rock stars who might throw televisions. Urgent message, Mr. Lennon. John opened the door wearing only his glasses and yesterday's trousers. The concierge, a thin man with nervous hands, held out a yellow Western Union telegram like it might explode. From a Mr. Zimmerman, sir. He insisted it reach you immediately. Zimmerman. The name meant nothing. John almost crumpled it up, almost threw it with the hundreds of fan letters piling up in the corner. But something about those words, insisted, immediately made him look. The message was 12 words. Real music dies when commerce begins. Meet me. Backstage, tomorrow. Kettle of fish. No signature. Just an address scrawled at the bottom. MacDougall Street, Greenwich Village. John read it 3 times. Each time, those first 5 words carved deeper into his chest. Real music dies when commerce begins. He looked at his gold watch. A gift from Brian Epstein. Worth more than most people's houses. He looked at his hands. Soft now. Manicured. When had that happened? When had the calluses from Hamburg disappeared? Paul was snoring in the next room. George was probably meditating. Ringo was definitely drunk. And John was holding a telegram from a stranger who somehow knew exactly what was eating him alive. The screaming fans, the matching suits, the choreographed bows, the 3-minute singles, the smiles that felt like masks, the music that used to mean everything, now packaged and sold like soap. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Tomorrow, he would go to Greenwich Village. He would find this Zimmerman, and he would discover why those 12 words felt like a diagnosis of a disease he'd been dying from since they landed in America. What John didn't know, couldn't know, was that Zimmerman was just another name, another mask, and the man behind it was about to show John Lennon something that would shatter everything the Beatles had become. The cab driver didn't want to take him to MacDougall Street. That's the Village, man. You sure you want to go there? Nice British boy-like? John kept his sunglasses on, collar turned up. If the driver recognized him, he didn't show it. Maybe the Beatles weren't as big as Brian claimed. Maybe outside the screaming stadiums, they were just another band. The thought should have worried him. Instead, it felt like freedom. Greenwich Village looked nothing like the Manhattan he knew. No gleaming hotels, no men in gray suits. Just narrow streets that bent like question marks. Buildings that leaned against each other like drunks sharing secrets. The air smelled of coffee, cigarettes, and something else. Revolution, maybe. Or just youth refusing to die quietly. The kettle of fish sat between a chess shop and a basement door marked only with a peace symbol. Through the grimy window, John saw shapes in smoke. Long hair, black turtlenecks. No one looked up when he entered. "You, Lennon?" The voice came from a corner booth, raspy, like it had been arguing with itself all night. John turned and saw him for the first time. Bob Dylan looked nothing like his photos. Smaller, thinner, 23 years old, but carrying centuries in his eyes. Hair like a declaration of war against barbershops. Wearing a jacket that might have belonged to a dead man. Zimmerman? Dylan. Zimmerman's dead. Killed him in Minneapolis. Sit down. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. The booth's leather was torn, stuffing bleeding out like cotton wounds. Dylan poured coffee from a flask. It wasn't coffee. Bourbon. 9 in the morning. That bother you? Should it? Everything should bother you. That's the point. Dylan studied him like a painting he was deciding whether to steal or burn. Those eyes, they weren't just looking at John. They were performing an autopsy. Saw you at Forest Hills, all four of you. Matching suits, matching smiles, matching souls. Made me want to vomit. John's fist clenched. You brought me here to insult. I brought you here because you're dying. Dylan lit a cigarette, offered one to John. Not your body. Your body's worth millions. But the thing that made you pick up a guitar in the first place? That's gasping for air. The words hit like fists. John wanted to argue, wanted to storm out. Instead, he took the cigarette. How would you know? Because I've been watching you. Hamburg, the cavern, when you were hungry, when you were angry, when the music came out like blood from a wound. That was real. Dylan pulled out a worn notebook, pages yellowed and torn. Know what this is? Every set list from your last 20 shows. Want to know how many songs you wrote from your gut? 0. Want to know how many were manufactured to make teenage girls cry? All of them. Those songs are lies, pretty lies, profitable lies, but lies, and you know it. That's why you're here. John stared at the notebook, at the meticulous documentation of his artistic death. This stranger had been studying him, following him, diagnosing him. What do you want? I want to show you something. Tonight, after your show at the Paramount, there's a place, a session, musicians playing for no one. No cameras, no screaming, no money. Just music the way it's supposed to be. Raw, honest, dangerous. Brian would never. Brian's not invited. None of them are. This is just for you, for the John Lennon who used to exist before they put him in a cage and taught him to sing on command. Dylan stood, threw money on the table. Real money, crumpled bills that looked like they'd been stolen or earned the hard way. Midnight, back entrance of the Paramount. Come alone, or don't come at all. But if you don't, he paused at the door. That emptiness you feel, it'll eat you alive. Trust me. I've seen it happen. Musicians becoming ghosts of themselves, walking corpses with record contracts. The door slammed. John sat alone in the booth, bourbon burning his throat, cigarette burning his fingers. That night, the Beatles played to 17,000 fans at the Paramount. They screamed for I Want to Hold Your Hand. They cried for All My Loving. But John wasn't there. His body was. His voice was. But John Lennon, the real one, the one who'd played Hamburg until his fingers bled, he was already gone, waiting for midnight, waiting for whatever Dylan was about to show him. Midnight came like a conspiracy. John slipped out the Paramount's back entrance while Paul argued with Brian about the set list. George was tuning his guitar obsessively. Ringo was smoking, staring at nothing. None of them noticed him leave. Dylan was waiting in a van that looked like it had been stolen from a funeral home. Black, unmarked, one headlight dead. Get in. They drove in silence through Manhattan streets that seemed darker than they should be. Dylan chain-smoked, windows down, cold August air whipping through the van like accusations. The radio played static, or maybe music so foreign John couldn't recognize it as music. Where are we going? Under. Under where? Under everything. They stopped at a warehouse in the Bowery. No signs, no lights. Just a metal door that looked like it had been keeping secrets since the Depression. Dylan knocked 4 times. Pause. 3 times. Pause. Once. The door opened. A giant black man with scars on his hands looked at John like he was measuring him for a coffin. He's clean, Dylan said. He better be. They descended stairs that seemed to go deeper than basements should. The air grew thick, heavy with smoke and sweat and something else. History, maybe. Or the ghosts of music that had been murdered by the industry above. Then John heard it. Music. But not like any music he'd known. It was jazz, but angrier, Folk but electric. Rock but without the poses. It was chaos, barely controlled, like a heart attack set to rhythm. The basement opened into a cavern, concrete walls sweating condensation. Maybe 50 people, all shadows in the smoke, and in the center, on a stage made of shipping pallets, musicians John had never seen, playing instruments like weapons. What is this place? This is where music comes to tell the truth. Dylan led him to a corner where the shadows were thickest. A woman with silver hair and blind eyes was playing piano like she was performing surgery on the keys. A drummer who couldn't have been 15 was making rhythms John didn't know existed. And the singer was bleeding. Not metaphorically, actually bleeding. From his fingers, from playing guitar strings that looked like razors. His voice wasn't singing. It was testifying, confessing, accusing. The words, John whispered. I can't understand the words. That's because he's not singing in English, or any language that has a name. He's singing in whatever language pain speaks. They stayed for 3 hours. 3 hours of music that made John's chest hurt, made him remember things he'd buried. His mother, dead when he was 17. The nights in Hamburg when they played on Speed and Rage. The songs he used to write before they told him what would sell. Between sets, Dylan introduced him to the musicians. No last names, just Marcus, who'd been to Vietnam and came back wrong. Sarah, who'd lost her daughter and turned grief into sound. Tommy, who'd been born in prison and learned music from the pipes in the walls. They don't play for money, Dylan explained. They play because if they don't, they'll die. Actually die. The music is all that's keeping them alive. This is illegal, isn't it? Everything real is illegal. That's how you know it's real. At 3 a.m., the music stopped. The shadows began dispersing. But Dylan grabbed John's arm. There's someone you need to meet. He led him to a room behind the stage. Smaller, darker, just candles and a figure sitting on the floor with an acoustic guitar. John Lennon, Dylan said. Meet Bob Newworth. He's going to tell you the truth about the Beatles. Newworth looked up, eyes like bullets, smile like a wound. The truth? The truth is you're already dead. You died the moment you put on matching suits. But Bobby here thinks you can be resurrected. I think he's wrong. I think once you sell your soul, you don't get it back. John felt rage building. You don't know anything about. I know you wrote Please Please Me in the same room where you wrote songs about your dead mother. I know you changed the words because dead mothers don't sell records. I know you hate Paul for smiling so easily. I know you hate yourself more. The words were scalpels, each one finding a nerve. How could you possibly? Because I was you. 5 years ago. Had a band, had a sound, had something to say. Then they found us. The men in suits, the ones who turned music into money. They made us famous, made us rich, made us empty. Newworth stood, walked close enough that John could smell the whiskey and loss on him. But there's a way out, a way to kill the Beatles without dying yourself. What are you talking about? Dylan stepped forward. We're talking about revolution, not the kind with guns. The kind with guitars. We're going to show you how to destroy everything you've built and build something real from the ashes. And if I don't want to? Newworth laughed, bitter, sharp. Then go back to your hotel. Put on your suit, smile for the cameras, sing your pretty songs, and wait for the emptiness to eat you from the inside out. But know this, every real musician in America will know you had the chance to matter and chose money instead. They left John alone in that room with just the candles and the echo of truth he didn't want to hear. When he finally climbed those stairs and emerged into the dawn, Manhattan looked different. Faker, like a movie set. Like everything above ground was just elaborate theater, and the only reality was in the basements where music went to bleed. 3 days passed like fever dreams. John went through the motions. Ed Sullivan, press conferences, teenage girls fainting in hotel lobbies. But his mind was underground, in that basement, with the bleeding singer and the piano that sounded like confessions. Paul noticed first. "You all right, mate? You seem distant." They were in the studio, RCA, recording something Brian called the next surefire hit. John couldn't even remember the name of the song. They all sounded the same now. Happy, harmless, hollow. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've been weird since Tuesday. Where did you go that night?" "Nowhere." Paul studied him. They'd known each other since they were boys, could read each other like music sheets. But something had changed. John was encrypted now, speaking a language Paul didn't understand. "John, whatever this is, it's nothing. Let's just record the bloody song." But when they started playing, something happened. John changed the chord progression, added minor keys where major should be. His voice, usually smooth for the records, came out raw, wounded. Cut. The producer, a man named Phillips, who wore ties that cost more than most people's rent, stormed into the booth. "What the hell was that?" "Music." "That wasn't music. That was noise. We need the single, the hit, the thing the girls will buy. Maybe the girls want something real. The girls want a dream about holding your hand, not whatever that was." John set down his guitar, walked out, left Paul, George, and Ringo staring at each other like witnesses to a crime they didn't understand. He found himself walking, no destination, just movement. Manhattan scrolled past like a fever dream. Then, somehow, he was back at the Kettle of Fish. Dylan was there, same booth, like he'd been waiting. "Took you long enough. I can't do it anymore. The studio, the songs, it's killing me." "I know, but I can't just quit. The contracts, the others, Brian, it would destroy everything. Everything needs destroying sometimes. That's how new things grow." Dylan pulled out a cassette tape, unmarked, wrapped in plastic like evidence. "What's this?" "Your salvation or your damnation. Depends on how you use it." John held the tape like it might explode. "2 nights ago, after you left, we recorded something. Me, Newworth, and some others. But we left space. For a voice. For your voice. Not the Beatles' voice. Yours. I can't. You can. Tonight. There's a studio in Harlem. Engineer named Tom Wilson. He records things the labels won't touch. Real things. Dangerous things. Midnight. Again. The others. Forget the others. This is about you. About the musician you were before they turned you into a product. That night, John told the others he was sick. Food poisoning. Paul looked suspicious. George looked worried. Ringo looked drunk. Brian looked at the money they were losing. The studio in Harlem was in a building that should have been condemned. 3rd floor. No sign. Just a door with Wilson scratched into the paint. Inside, it looked nothing like RCA. No polish, no shine. Just machines that looked like they'd been stolen from different decades and wired together by a madman. And in the corner, behind a glass window scratched and cracked, sat Tom Wilson. "You're Lennon." Not a question, a diagnosis. "Dylan said you were coming. Said you wanted to commit career suicide. I want to make music." "Same thing these days." Wilson pressed play on the cassette. What came out of the speakers made John's bones vibrate. It was Dylan's voice, but transformed. Electric, angry, and underneath, instruments that sounded like they were fighting each other. Bass lines that walked like threats. Drums that hit like accusations. "There's a gap," Wilson said. "Verses 2 and 4, bridge, final chorus. That's where you come in." "What do I sing?" "Whatever needs to come out. Whatever you've been swallowing since you became famous." John put on headphones that looked like they'd survived a war, stood at a microphone held together with electrical tape. And when the music started, when that gap arrived, he didn't sing. He bled. Words came out he didn't know he'd been holding. About Hamburg, about his mother, about the emptiness of fame, about the death of everything real. His voice cracked, broke, rebuilt itself, became something between singing and screaming. When it was over, he was on his knees, crying. Wilson just nodded. That's the first real thing that's been recorded in this room all year. What do I do with it? You. Nothing. This tape doesn't exist. You were never here. But copies might find their way to certain people. DJs who play things after midnight. Kids who trade bootlegs like secrets. The underground that's waiting for someone to tell the truth. And then? Then you have a choice. Keep being the Beatles. Keep being dead. Or, Wilson lit a cigarette, offered one to John. Or you use this. You go back to your band, and you start poisoning the well. Slowly, song by song. Making them uncomfortable. Making the label nervous. Until they have to let you evolve or let you go. That could destroy everything. Everything's already destroyed. You're just the last to notice. John took the cigarette. The smoke tasted like freedom, like destruction, like possibility. When does it leak? Tomorrow. Maybe the day after. Depends on how brave the underground is feeling. John left that studio different, carrying a secret like a weapon. He'd recorded something real. Something that would spread through the underground like a virus. Something that would mark the beginning of the end of the Beatles as the world knew them. The tape hit the underground 5 days later. John was in the shower at the Warwick Hotel when Paul burst in, fully clothed, holding a transistor radio like evidence at a murder trial. What the hell is this? Through the static and the steam, John heard it. His voice, raw, bleeding, singing words the Beatles would never sing. Behind it, Dylan's harmonica wailing like a ghost. The DJ, broadcasting from some pirate station in Jersey, was calling it the sound of John Lennon's soul escaping. Turn it off. Turn it off. Turn it off? John, this is everywhere. Kids are trading copies. Brian's having a breakdown. The label's threatening to sue everyone who's ever held a guitar. John turned off the shower, stood there dripping, naked, unashamed. Good. Good? Have you lost your mind? I found it. Paul threw the radio against the wall. It shattered. Kept playing for 3 seconds before dying. We have a contract. We have obligations. We have nothing. We have matching suits and empty songs and screaming girls who don't even hear the music, just the fame. The fame pays for everything. The fame costs everything. George appeared in the doorway. Quiet. Always quiet. But his eyes were different. Curious. I heard it, George said, at a record shop in the village. Kids were gathered around a tape player like it was feeding them. It's destroying us, Paul said. Maybe we need destroying, George replied. The words hung in the air like smoke. Reno appeared, drunk already, though it was barely noon. Brian's downstairs, with lawyers, and men I don't recognize. They look serious. John dressed slowly, deliberately, not in the matching suit, in jeans, a black t-shirt, the clothes he wore in Hamburg. Paul watched him like he was watching a stranger steal his best friend's body. The hotel conference room was full of shadows in suits. Brian paced. The lawyers sat like vultures. And in the corner, a man John had never seen. Tall, gray, eyes like mathematics. John, Brian started, this is Mr. Gorman, from the label. Gorman didn't stand, didn't extend his hand, just studied John like an equation he was solving. Mr. Lennon, we have a problem. I don't. You do. You recorded unauthorized material. With a competitor's artist. That's breach of contract. Sue me. We will, but first, we're going to fix this. You're going to deny it's you. Say it's an impersonator, a fake. It's the realest thing I've done in 2 years. Gorman's face didn't change. Like emotion was something that happened to other people. Reality doesn't sell records. Dreams sell records. And you're going to keep selling dreams. No. The word fell like a guillotine, Brian actually gasped. Paul closed his eyes. George leaned forward. Ringo poured himself another drink from a flask he'd hidden in his boot. No? Gorman repeated the word like he'd never heard it before. No, I'm done with dreams, done with lies, done with matching suits and 3-minute singles about nothing. Then you're done with the Beatles. Maybe the Beatles are done with the Beatles. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then George did something unexpected. He laughed. He's right, you know. We've become a parody of ourselves. A cartoon. The lovable mop-tops. When did we stop being musicians and start being merchandise? Paul's face was red. We became successful. We became the biggest band in the world. We became dead, John said. And that tape? That's proof I'm still alive. Gorman stood, adjusted his tie. You have 48 hours. Either you deny this tape and return to your obligations, or we exercise Clause 47B of your contract. What's Clause 47B? Ringo asked. Total forfeiture. Everything you've recorded, everything you own, everything you are belongs to us. And we bury you so deep you'll need archaeology to find your career. He left. The lawyers followed. Brian collapsed in a chair. John, please, I built this. We built this. Don't destroy it over some artistic crisis. It's not a crisis, Brian. It's a resurrection. That night, while the others slept or pretended to sleep, John met Dylan on the roof of the Warwick. The city spread below them like a circuit board. Lights blinking. Current flowing. Alive and electric. They're threatening to destroy me. Good. You can't rebuild until you're destroyed. The others don't understand. George does. I can see it. He's been dying longer than you, just quieter about it. What do I do? Dylan pulled out another cassette. You double down. This is something new, something we recorded last night. But this time, it's not just underground. This time, we're going to play it live. Tomorrow night, the Paramount, during your show. That's insane. That's necessary. You're going to stop mid-set. You're going to tell the truth. And you're going to play this live. In front of everyone. The girls. The press. The suits. They'll crucify me. They crucified Christ too. But people still remember what he said. John held the tape. It felt heavier than it should. Like it contained more than music. Like it contained a future where the Beatles as products ceased to exist. And the Beatles as artists were born again. What if I'm not brave enough? Then you weren't worth saving. Dylan walked to the edge of the roof. For a moment, John thought he might jump. Instead, he turned. You know what the difference is between us and them? The suits, the lawyers, the Brian Epsteins of the world? What? They're afraid of falling. We've already fallen. We've got nothing left to lose. 20,000 voices screaming. John stood backstage at the Paramount, guitar in hand, listening to the sound of worship. But all he could hear was the cassette tape in his pocket, the weight of what he was about to do. Paul was adjusting his bass, still not talking to him. George was meditating in a corner. Ringo was drumming on his thighs, nervous energy he couldn't contain. 2 minutes, Brian said. His hand shook. He'd been drinking. Brian never drank. John, Brian grabbed his arm. Please, whatever you're thinking of doing. I'm thinking of telling the truth. The truth will destroy us. The lies already have. They walked on stage. The screaming hit like a physical force. John saw them. Thousands of girls, crying, reaching, wanting something they couldn't name. He'd given them dreams for 2 years. Tonight, he was going to give them reality. They opened with, I want to hold your hand. The screaming got louder. Paul smiled. That perfect Paul smile. George played the notes precisely, professionally. Dead. She Loves You came next. Then, A Hard Day's Night. The script. The formula. The manufactured magic. Then, after the 8th song, when they were supposed to play All My Loving, John stepped to his microphone. Stop. One word. The band stopped. The screaming continued for 5 seconds, then 10, then began to fade as 20,000 people realized something was wrong. I said stop. Silence. Complete. Terrifying. You don't know me, John said into the microphone. His voice echoed through the Paramount like judgment. You think you do. You think you love me. But you love someone who doesn't exist. A character. A product. A lie. Paul stepped toward him. John held up his hand. My name is John Lennon. I'm from Liverpool. My mother died when I was 17. I've been angry ever since. But they won't let me sing about that. Because anger doesn't sell records to teenage girls. Murmuring in the crowd. Confusion. Some girls were crying, but differently now. Like they were watching something die. Every song we've sung tonight was calculated, manufactured, designed to make you feel something safe, something comfortable, something that doesn't threaten anyone or anything. Brian was in the wings, frantically gesturing. Security guards were moving, uncertain. But music, real music, it's supposed to be dangerous. It's supposed to tell the truth. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. John pulled out the cassette, held it up. This is real music. My friend Bob Dylan helped me find it, or remember it. And I'm going to play it for you now. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to scream, scream. But for once, you're going to hear John Lennon, not the Beatles, John. Me. He nodded to the sound engineer he'd paid $500 to be ready. The cassette started playing through the Paramount's massive speakers. What came out was revolution. Dylan's voice, raw and accusatory. John's voice, layered over it, harmony and discord at once. Lyrics about war, about poverty, about the emptiness of fame, about America eating itself alive. The music was chaos. Electric guitars that sounded like machines dying. Drums that hit like bombs. Some people ran for the exits. Others stood frozen. But something else happened. Something unexpected. Some of them started listening. Really listening. Not screaming. Not crying. Listening. A girl in the front row, maybe 16, stopped reaching for the stage and just stood there, absorbing. A group of boys who'd been dragged by their girlfriends started nodding to the rhythm. An older couple, chaperones probably, grabbed each other's hands like they were remembering something. The song lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the Paramount was silent. Then one person clapped, the girl in the front row. Then another. Then dozens. Not everyone. Maybe not even most. But enough. Paul grabbed the microphone. I'm sorry about this, everyone. John's been unwell. We're going to continue with our regular no. George stepped forward. George, who never spoke on stage. No, we're not. He looked at John. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, death, and rebirth. John's right. We've been lying. To you, to ourselves. We came from Liverpool playing in dirty clubs for drunks and prostitutes. Our music was raw, real. Then they cleaned us up, made us safe, made us rich, made us empty. Ringo stood up from his drums. I joined this band because they were different, dangerous. But we haven't been dangerous in years. We've been a product, and I'm tired of being sold. Paul stood alone. The crowd watched him, waiting. He could save the Beatles, return them to the script, or, when John and I were 15, Paul said slowly, we wrote songs about death, about sex, about anger, about Liverpool burning down. They told us those songs wouldn't sell, so we wrote Love Me Do instead. He looked at John. Play it again, the tape. But this time we play along. What happened next made history. Not the history in Rolling Stone, not the history in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The secret history, the one told in bootlegs and whispers. The Beatles, the biggest band in the world, destroyed themselves on stage, played along to a cassette of revolution. Made noise instead of music. told truth instead of dreams. Some called it the death of the Beatles. Others called it their birth. But in that moment, in the Paramount Theater, with 20,000 witnesses, John Lennon did something that changed music forever. He chose authenticity over success. He chose art over commerce. He chose to fall rather than keep flying on manufactured wings. The New York Times headline read, "Beatles suffer collective breakdown." The Daily News was less kind. Fab Four become Mad Four. Brian Epstein was found in his hotel room at noon, surrounded by empty pill bottles and resignation letters. Alive, but barely. The label had already issued 17 statements denying everything, claiming food poisoning, claiming exhaustion, claiming anything but the truth. But the truth was already spreading. In coffee shops in Greenwich Village, kids passed around bootleg recordings of the Paramount show. In Harlem, jazz musicians nodded approval. In Detroit, a young singer named Marvin Gaye listened and started writing songs about war instead of love. John sat in Dylan's apartment on McDougal Street, watching the city wake up to a different world. The apartment was chaos. Instruments everywhere. Ashtrays overflowed. The others. Paul won't speak to me. Brian's destroyed. The label's threatening everything. Good. How is any of this good? Dylan turned from the window. In the morning light, he looked ancient, biblical, like a prophet who'd seen the future and decided to burn down the present. Because now you're free. A knock at the door. George entered without waiting for permission. Then Ringo. They looked like survivors of something, which maybe they were. Paul? John asked. With Brian. Trying to salvage something. George sat on the floor cross-legged, like he was about to meditate or testify. I've been thinking all night about what happened, about what we did. We destroyed everything, Ringo said, but he was smiling. We destroyed nothing. We revealed everything. The emptiness was already there. We just stopped hiding it. Another knock, harder, authoritative. Dylan opened it. A man in a black suit. Not a label man. Something else. FBI, maybe. CIA. One of those acronyms that meant power without accountability. Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Lennon, you're both requested to come with us. Requested? Strongly requested. They were driven in silence, to a building with no signs, led to a room with no windows, seated across from a man with no expression. Gentlemen, what you did last night was dangerous. Music is supposed to be dangerous, John said. Not that kind of dangerous. You upset the order, the balance. Happy teenagers buy records, buy products, keep the economy moving. Angry teenagers. They burn things down. Maybe things need burning. The man smiled. It was terrifying. Mr. Lennon, you're a foreign national. Your visa can be revoked. Mr. Dylan, you have a history we're aware of. Associations with subversive elements. Everyone I know is subversive. Exactly. The man placed a document on the table. Sign this, both of you. It states that last night was performance art, a stunt, that the Beatles will return to their regular programming, that Mr. Dylan will stop corrupting foreign assets. Foreign assets? John laughed. Bitter, sharp. Is that what I am now? You're what we allow you to be. Dylan lit a cigarette despite the no smoking sign on the wall. And if we don't sign? Mr. Lennon goes back to England. Tonight. The Beatles are banned from American soil. Mr. Dylan? Well, accidents happen. Even to poets. They sat in silence. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry insects. Somewhere, a clock ticked. Or maybe that was just John's heart. You're afraid of us, John said suddenly. You're actually afraid of what we did last night. We're afraid of disorder, of questions, of young people thinking instead of buying. So you want us to go back to sleep. We want you to help others sleep, soundly, peacefully, profitably. Dylan stood, walked to the door, tried the handle. Locked, of course. You know what your problem is, Dylan said to the man. You think music is just sound, but it's not. It's idea, and ideas are viruses. They spread, mutate, survive. What John did last night, it's already infected thousands, and those thousands will infect millions. We've contained worse. No, you've contained protests, marches, speeches, but you've never contained a feeling, and that's what John gave them last night. The feeling that they've been lied to. That feeling, it's going to grow, with or without us. The man's expression never changed, but something in his eyes shifted. Calculation, reassessment. You have 48 hours to decide, sign or face the consequences. They were driven back to Dylan's apartment in the same silence. When they got out, George and Ringo were still there. And now, Paul. Paul looked destroyed, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left just the shell. "Brian's in the hospital," Paul said. "Overdose, intentional." The words hung like a noose. The labels dropped us, effective immediately. They're seizing everything. The recordings, the rights, even the name. The Beatles belong to them now. "The Beatles never existed," John said. "It was always just us. Four lads from Liverpool who forgot who they were." "Who are we now?" Ringo asked. "Free," George said. "We're free." Paul laughed, bitter, broken. "Free? We're ruined, finished. Nobody will touch us. We'll never record again." "In their studios," Dylan corrected, "but there are other studios, underground ones, in basements, in warehouses, in places they can't reach. Playing for 50 people instead of 50,000. Playing for people who listen instead of scream." Paul looked at John, really looked at him, for the first time since the Paramount. "You really believe this was worth it? Destroying everything we built?" "We didn't build it, Paul. They did. We were just the materials. But now we get to build something ourselves. Something real. And if it fails, then we fail as artists, not as products." A knock at the door, soft. Hesitant, Dylan opened it. A girl, maybe 17, holding a guitar case covered in peace signs and poems. "Mr. Dylan? Mr. Lennon? I was at the Paramount last night. What you did, it changed everything. My friends and I, we've been playing your bootleg all night, learning it, adding to it, making our own versions." She pulled out a cassette. "We recorded this, 30 of us, in my parents' garage. It's your song, but different, evolved. We're calling it the Paramount Sessions. There are already dozens of versions, maybe hundreds. Kids all over the city are recording their own." John took the cassette, held it like it was holy. "You see," Dylan said, "the virus is spreading." The girl left. Then another knock. Another kid with another tape. Then another. Within an hour, Dylan's apartment was full of young musicians, all carrying their own interpretations of what had happened at the Paramount. They played them, each one different, some angry, some beautiful, some barely recognizable, but all real, all honest, all dangerous. "What we started," John said to Paul. "Not products, not singles, a revolution." Paul picked up his bass. For the first time in days, he smiled. Not the PR smile, the real one, the Liverpool smile. "Then let's give them something else to revolutionize." They played until dawn, all of them, the Beatles who weren't the Beatles anymore. Dylan, the kids who'd found them, making music that would never be sold in stores, never be played on the radio, but would spread through the underground like fire through dry wood. At 6 a.m., as the sun painted Manhattan gold, John made his decision. He wouldn't sign the government's paper. He would go underground, stay in America illegally if he had to, keep making the music that scared them. Because Dylan was right. Once you've fallen, you've got nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. The bootlegs from that night became legend. The Paramount Sessions spread across the country, duplicated in basements and garages, passed hand to hand like sacred texts. The Beatles, as the world knew them, died that night in New York. But John Lennon, the real one, was finally born. Some say you can still find those tapes in record stores that don't officially exist, in collections that collectors deny having, in the spaces between what was and what could have been. The government never caught him. The label never found him. He disappeared into the underground and became myth. But late at night, in clubs with no names, in basements where the walls sweat truth, you might hear it. A voice that sounds like John Lennon, singing songs that were never recorded, playing music that was never sold. Free. Finally free. Or maybe that's just what we want to believe. Maybe he signed their paper. Maybe he went back to England. Maybe the Beatles reformed and made more empty songs for screaming girls. But somewhere in some universe, on some frequency only the desperate can hear, John Lennon and Bob Dylan are still in that basement, still playing the dangerous music, still telling the truth that nobody wants to buy, but everyone needs to hear. And maybe, if you listen carefully enough, you can hear it too. The sound of artists choosing to fall rather than fly on borrowed wings. The sound of truth being more important than success. The sound of music being reborn in the death of everything that tried to contain it. Listen carefully. It's still playing.